Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good middle of the night, um, good whatever, because life is good. Well, is it though? Maybe not actually, which is why we're here, kind of, isn't it? Huh? Um, Life is good for some of us, but not for all of us. And frankly, there are so many things that make life not good, i.e., systemic problems, that all of us have jobs and all of us actually are here because life is not good everywhere and for everybody. Um, so welcome to Awake, Aware, Arise, where we are going to talk about the different kinds of systemic problems that are plaguing the world. And we're going to think of how we can change our perspectives, how we can think of them differently, how we can address them in ourselves and our families and communities and workplaces. Because after all, we are coaches and we are leaders, and someone's got to do it. It might as well be us, right? Right. Okay, cool. So I'm Magda. I think all of you who are here right now live probably know me, possibly are sick of me because I'm always on all these channels, but I'm not sick of you. I'm very happy that you are here. And I hope that you will enjoy this introductory session to Awake, Aware, Arise, and that you will join us over the next 5 weeks. We will come back to you at this exact same Zoom link 3 times a day, and go to awakeawarearise.com to check the time in your local time zone. Do not quote me as to what time anything starts, because you will not get to the right place at the right time. But we'll come to you 3 times every single day with different speakers taking completely varied points of view on the systemic issues that are happening in the world today. Some will be discussions, some will be panels, some people are authors, some are coaches, some are not coaches, but they do coaching as part of their job, their life. So we hope that you will come back and learn with us and improve this wonderful planet that we live in, because we have to. Okay, that is me. I'm going to hand over to Ram, who is the founder of Cocharia and who is going to be leading today's discussion. Ram, can you introduce today and our speakers as well, please?
Yeah, sure, Magda, thanks. Well, yeah, technically I'm the co-founder of Cocharia, because Cocharia was founded by Pranav, my son, and I. And of course, Magda is a partner with us now. We have 4 people here in the panel, 2 of our trainers, Priya and Michael. Michael is in Montreal, Priya is in Chennai, and 2 others who are learners who would pretty soon be coaches. And from what little I know, they are doing so amazingly well that truly I'm proud that they are part of our community. Elizabeth from New Jersey and Paula from Chicago, all with diverse backgrounds, to sort of put together a context to what we are going to do in the next about 30 days that Magda has taken responsibility for. I don't envy her. I have been in those shoes for a shorter period of time. I'm pretty happy that I'm hopefully relaxed, sitting back and enjoying myself. 3 things. One is what led to this conference in a way. The second is, what is it that we would like to happen during the 30 days? And finally, what is it we would like to have you take away from this conference in one way or another? And I would truly be delighted if on the last day, on October 22nd, we are going to have a closing session. At that point in time, there are some of you who are part of the audience at this point in time. Reach out to Magda and I and say, hey, you know, we have been inspired and we've started on this journey to do something about what we are talking about here. And so we would like to share our viewpoints, and that will be a beautiful ending to a journey which we hope will become a regular event in the Cocharia calendar. We've been having, in the last about 3 or 4 years, these virtual conferences, apart from a couple that we have held physically in the city of Bangalore. And initially they started with about 10 days, 15 days. Last year we had for about, I think, a month. And this year, Magda has been pretty adventurous. A month and three days, almost about 60 odd sessions. It may seem easy. It may be easy for many people, but for us with practically no support staff, just a few people putting together. There's a team, Magda and Mala, and supported by a few volunteers like Smita here, and Aish and Meenakshi and other people who are past learners. It's been a truly arduous at one level, and also tremendous learning and an inspiring journey to be where we are. Leading to where it all started from, some of you who listen to people like Peter Hawkins, for instance, he always opens up his discussions and classes with a question: what were you coaches doing when the cities were burning, the temperatures were going up, or the banks were sinking and something happened? And I think the first time I heard it, and also every time I hear it, it does something to me. What were we really doing? Were we looking at the code of ethics laid down by these great credentialing agencies about confidentiality and privacy and all that stuff? Do we at all ever stop to think about how are we placed in this larger milieu of a community and the world where things are happening around us that we don't even seem to see? Otto Scharmer so beautifully puts it together in his theory U. He talks about the concept of absensing. We don't see what we see. We don't hear what we hear. And we don't act on what we need to. He calls this the approach of the closed mind, which only thinks about what is good for me, what I have done all the while, what do I need to survive for myself and do well. And the moment I talk about this, you can always visualize the great leaders of this world who are in that mode today. The closed heart, where there's no empathy, there's no compassion, there is no love except for myself, the selfishness. And the closed will, where we have no desire to act. He talks about the voices of cynicism and judgment and fear. And he talks about how we can move from that state of absensing to the state of presensing, where we become curious, empathetic, compassionate, loving, and willing to act on the basis of what we realize we ought to do. As Elizabeth was saying a few minutes ago, and she will talk about it in probably more specifics in terms of the self-awareness part of it. Are we self-aware? Are we doing anything about what we see around us? People say that we are awake. Are we really awake? Our eyes may be open, our limbs may be moving, but do we really see what we need to see? Magda talked about, yeah, some of us are good, but how about a very, very large, significant population of this world, which is not in a good shape? Is there something that we as coaches can do about it instead of pontificating about, hey, my ethics prevent me from talking about anything what the client wants? Quite right. We don't want you to talk about what your philosophies are, what your judgment is, what your agenda is in a coaching conversation. But there are many other forums in which we can be influential and inspiring, and we can stick our necks out and say, hey, this is what I believe in. It doesn't have to be in a coaching conversation. Or if you're doing team coaching, systemic coaching, there are multiple ways in which we can bring this about, as I see day in and day out. And this whole concept of awake, aware, and arise comes from a scripture, the Vedic scripture, 5,000 years old, called the Kathopanishad. It's about a young kid who allegorically travels to the heavens to meet with the god of justice called Yama in the Hindu pantheon, and asks him this question: what is this that happens after I die? And Yama tries to bribe him with multiple things, and this kid stands firm He says, I want to know. I want to know the truth. Or what is that existential truth? What happens after I leave this life? And the truth of that is what Yama starts with saying, awake, aware, and arise. And then says that path of traveling beyond the truth of the life as we face it today is like the razor's edge, from which Somerset Maugham borrowed that phrase and wrote about it. It's not an easy path, it's a difficult journey. It's very likely that you would get hurt, but in the process, you would also evolve. There is going to be pain in any space where we become uncomfortable and we want to create and we want to grow. So to what extent are we able to put ourselves out in that space? Look beyond us, beyond our immediate community or family, into a much larger community which is in suffering today, in any part of the world, be it because of issues of economy, issues of race, issues of religion, issues of migration, issues of whatever it might be. Are we even thinking about it? Are we doing even a little bit about it? We're not expecting everybody to be a Gandhi or a Mandela or maybe Obama or someone, whoever it is. But we can all in our own small ways can do something to initiate a movement which can become a huge movement of power. So I'll just leave it at this. And just as an aside, probably total happenstance or coincidence are never coincidences. I happened to watch this Netflix documentary called Social Dilemma, in which they talk about how the social media is influencing us, creating addiction. And it is today in a position to create huge cataclysmic changes in society, turns utopias into dystopias by manipulating the way that we think. The power of social media is huge. The power for it to do good is also huge. For as the knife in the hands of whether it's a murderer or a surgeon, we can use it effectively. Not all aspects of social media is bad. So can we embrace those parts of it and be able to help people realize, to create a self-awareness in order to do something about it? I'll just close with one last remark. Way back, several years ago, many decades ago, when our children were still in school, in a school in Jakarta called the Jakarta International School, and I still recall this principal. He was a PhD from Harvard, Niall Nelson, an Irishman. When I asked him, hey, what do you want these students to be when they step out of the portals of your school? He said, just one thing. There's nothing else I want except that they are responsible adults when they step out of the school. I'm not bothered about their careers. I think that everything will happen the moment they think and are responsible as adults. Every time that I work with a kid, that is all that I remember. Can we make them responsible? Can we make them awake and be aware and arise? And unfortunately, many of us who are adults, we aren't yet there where we are adults. We don't feel responsible. We don't feel accountable to what is happening around us. So hopefully, if a little bit of that can happen during the next 30 days of this session, I think that'll be a tremendous achievement. And we would like to see some of you on the closing session. So I'll just stop here and invite others here, starting with the two learners, Elizabeth and Paula, and then Michael and Priya. Thank you. Elizabeth.
So thank you, Ram, for this invitation, and thank you, everyone who is here. And as Ron posed a question around where were you and what were you doing in the midst of all that is happening, for the past 25 years, I have devoted my life's journey and my career to being an advocate for social justice. and providing education and training that helps people to begin to understand systemic and institutional oppression and how to dismantle these systems, working with preschool to senior citizens. But this particular sense of urgency has caused me to reimagine what is necessary for this work. And so I have been focusing on working with individuals to understand what it takes to create courageous and brave spaces to make some of these matters just discussable. What it takes for an individual to have the mind space or the courage or the bravery to say what's so, whether it's from a place of ignorance and not knowing, to a place of anger and being frustrated, to a place where you are adamant about standing up for justice. Wherever you are on that spectrum, there is space and place to be courageous and brave. And I have been doing that work since this newer emergence of injustice is being revealed to the world in a different way.
Paula?
You know, Elizabeth, I'm inspired by what you say and your career path. I have been in a place where I've had lots of opportunity to do that. And I think at times I have, but not as well as I could have. And I think that's what drew me into coaching deeper, though I have held the title of coach and now I have a leadership role. But when this all started, this particular brand of what's going on started back in March for me, I really came to think about I started to ask myself, what am I doing and how am I engaging in this space in a way that is courageous and brave, but also just, I had a tremendous amount of fear that overcame me in a way I'd never experienced before in my life. And what I came to learn was that it was fear of how can I take action? Will I be overwhelmed by what I'm being asked to do? And that's what actually drew me to Cocharia. I just really started to realize I need to really do this engagement and understanding how to hold space for people and be present for people in a way that's effective and meaningful. And it was a way for me to find courage and engage and put a structure on how to do that. So I'm in a very personal space right now, going from someone who'd worked a lot with individuals and saw myself as influencing the world in that sort of way, to seeing that I need to step out and be broader about that and look at systems more and how to do that in a way that I'm not overcome by my fear, but sort of galvanized by how many people are willing to step up with me. So you know, from a very personal space, I see that coaching is a way for me to develop a practice for doing that. And it, you know, I remember when I talked to my husband about wanting to do this, he said, whether or not this turns into a business or a career trajectory for you, I see so much about what it means to you personally to engage in this. And that's really where I am right now, is developing the ability to do that.
Thank you, Paula. Michael, Priya, as coaches yourself, master coaches and trainers, so what is it that you think your role is and your vision is?
Yeah, when you were talking earlier, Ram, about, you know, Peter Hawkins introducing his sessions with "Where were you when?" I'm kind of reminded of another professor across town in England at Oxford Brookes University, Tatiana Bashkirova, who says, "Be careful about beautiful ideas and where they may lead you. Where are you getting hooked and enamored? And how is that influencing your coaching?" The more I've learned, I've spent 10 years studying coaching, the different methodologies, theories, and practices. And each one has its merits. And I think we all, as coaches, fold in different models, theories, and approaches depending on where we ourselves are in our own lives. Many of us have been forced to pivot, both as coaches and as clients in this new reality. And so as the future is not easily defined in terms of projection of 3 to 5 years, let alone 3 to 5 months, this has created quite a bit of angst and consternation amongst both coaches and clients, CEOs, leaders worldwide, etc. And it's also caused a lot of introspection. A lot of relationships are getting strained. So people are waking to a different type of discomfort. They're moving away from a life of comfort, always in pursuit of comfort, to one having to adapt to discomfort. It's not unlike Ashoka, the great Indian warlord who turned to peace and ultimately was the title of Ashoka, the global organization of social entrepreneurs. After spending 25 years in pursuing expertise and profits, I happened to come across How to Change the World, which was about Ashoka and social entrepreneurs. And that led me to say, how can I contribute and collaborate to the world? Today is the third day of Rosh Hashanah, marking the Jewish New Year. And fundamental to the Jewish religion is the idea of tikkun olam, to heal, to repair the world. And whether you're Gandhi, be the change you want to see, it starts with you. It starts with taking your role and responsibility in terms of the choices you make. As an associate trainer, I just came off a weekend of training a cohort where the whole discussion came down to choice points in a coaching conversation, a coaching session. What guides those choice points? And more people are starting to recognize that they're self-authoring the next phase of their career. And they would like to take control, but the control isn't there. So this idea of loving kindness needs to come forward. There's too much aggravation, aggression, consternation in the world. How can we be kinder with ourselves? How can we be kinder with our clients? And how can we be kinder to Mother Earth that sustains us and allows us this wonderful opportunity to contribute to the betterment and to repair a world of hurt?
Thanks, Michael. Priya?
So I'm just, hello everyone, and I'm just totally moved by what each one had to say. I think it came from a very deep personal space, the way everyone articulated over here. And I think that is what, to me, this entire 4 weeks is about. Can you go to that little space within yourself and see what is stirring you, see how much it gets stirred so you can actually take action and make one small change, whatever that may be, in order to make the world a better place. And I think I'm really cognizant of the fact that VUCA has never been better explained than what we're experiencing right now. And it is not somewhere out there, far away, another country, another place, an office room. It's actually in our homes. And as a mentor coach, when I'm working with a lot of learners now, every session we come to get the pulse of many people are going through very difficult times. So we may not be able to go out there and do big things, but can we in our small ways? And when I say small ways, it's about I'm really conscious of, can we create that space like Paula was saying, right? Create that space to include discomfort, include unpleasant emotions, include difficulty. After all, as coaches, we are looking at working with the unknown, working in a space of not knowing. And I think this is a best example for all of us, coaches, leaders, to show up in a space where we can create that safety for people to talk, safety for people to be themselves. often heard of people who say, you know, I'm tired of being positive. It's really getting to me. I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, unless there is that safety for them to say that, there's nothing you can do. It's just somewhere ambiguous underneath. But having articulated it, I think there is space there for them to take action. And I mean, again, I'm reminded of how closely connected we are to each other as human beings in an ecosystem, to nature. It's just coming alive. And it's really the time to reinvent, I think. The time to create the space for people to be themselves and find new ways of being. A time to recalibrate. And I'm just so very happy that in being present here in the 4 weeks, in some ways we are able to make that happen. At least leave people with thoughts that will lead to some action, whatever that may be.
Thanks, Priya. So, yeah, I would invite Magda. I know that, Magda, it's too early for you. You haven't had enough cups of coffee. But what I would really like, so one of the things I just want to say here is, Magda came into our lives, Pranav's and mine. She was a friend of Pranav, and she was introduced, and we couldn't afford her. She was doing things, and for some reason, she felt that what we were doing appealed to her, and she stepped into our lives and our business. And since then, we've really grown in multiple ways everywhere. In the early days, I still remember conversations always used to end up very explosively. So I would say something, she would say, "What are you thinking? You're just dumping 100 things on me. How the hell am I supposed to do this?" So I would just tell her, "Look, believe in yourself, and the universe conspires to make things happen." She's utter rubbish. I don't believe a word of it. Now, today she tells me, you know, I feel terrified when I suddenly find myself repeating those words of yours about the universe and believing in myself and the universe and so on and so on. What the hell has happened to me? I think something tremendously powerful has happened to her, and tremendously powerful happened to many people who are walking the path with Cocharia today. So we are today working on a vision and a mission, and which is why we have people like Michael, Priya, and others like them, and students like, not students, learners who are going to be better than us, Paula and Elizabeth here, and many others here. And there's a vision that we would like to build a community. We would like to democratize coaching. We would like to make coaching socially responsible, not just a money-making machine, not just coaching CEOs, much more than that. Can we coach those people who are the migrant workers? Can we coach those young kids who are in trouble today, the dropouts and so on and so forth? What is it that we can do for them? That is a vision with which we are working.
I will disagree with one thing that Ram said. I mean, there's some things that I kind of want to, but I won't. I'll disagree with we are going to build a community. We're trying to do something. We will do something. We are doing all of those things. We're just going to continue growing that and expanding that. So the vision that we stated for Cocharia was to enable everyone, regardless of age, location, and socioeconomic status, to be their best self. And it doesn't have the word coaching in there because I don't think it's just about coaching. I think it's about the coaching skills, or the skills that we learn as coaches. And it's about that personal growth and self-awareness that we get to experience both as coaches and as people who are coached. But what it all comes down to is the democratization of all this. So, you know, a lot of what we do is centered around that. So part of why this event exists and why it's free to attend and why it's so broad and across different time zones and across so many different topics is because we want to give access to people from all over the place to this knowledge, to the inspiration that will come from watching my illustrious panelists today, as well as others over the next 5 weeks. And the community is growing every day, and it's amazing. And I will do a shameless plug and request, please everyone share Cocharia, share this event, share the kinds of things that we do. Not because we're, you know, selfish about, we want to be a big, huge company that's making a ton of cash. Of course we do, so that we can use that to do other better, bigger things. But it's with the support of people who are attending today that we are able to continue our growth, and we are able to fulfill that vision of enabling everybody, regardless of who they are and where they are, to be their best self. So I know that Ram vanished for a second, not sure what happened, but that's okay, he'll come back soon. So I want to take the opportunity just to talk about a couple of things that we're doing that are enabling this vision. One of them I'm really excited about. It's our youth leadership program that Leah Black, who I'm not sure if she's in the audience today, but Leah is leading. We have taken the kinds of skills that we learn as coaches, the amazing, you know, self-awareness that we get from the kinds of things that we do as coaches, and we've translated it into a program that speaks to young people. So this first program is targeted at 18 to 25-year-olds. We're going to expand it to 15 to 25-year-olds. And it's all about learning the kinds of skills that we now, as adults, as leaders, as coaches, have the benefit of knowing that we didn't when we were young people. So what can, you know, Cocharia do to empower, teach, enable, support the next generation of leaders? And the way that we're doing it is we're doing a mixed model where there'll be some aspects that will be paid, so that they can then in turn provide access to this program to young people around the world who can't afford it. Because again, I'm going to go back to this democratization of coaching. We want everybody, regardless of age, location, or socioeconomic status, to be their best self, not just the CEOs of the world, not just the people who have disposable income and don't have to worry about, you know, how they're going to put food on the table. So that's what gets me excited about Cocharia. That's why I joined Cocharia, this ability to be able to touch a lot of lives and really transform through the kinds of things that I know coaching can do. If nothing else, with this event and with any programs that Cocharia runs, if nothing else happens but everyone's self-awareness goes up a little bit, so that we question our motivations a little bit more, or we just look at how our actions and our words affect people around us. I think even that is already a huge, huge, huge win, because that's going to trickle down. I can tell you, like Ram said, I have transformed a little bit in the past 3 years, and I now have this view of, yeah, of course something can happen. If I can think of it, that can happen. I know I have this unconditional positive regard for myself, where I can see that I can do these things. I believe in myself, and I know what steps that I need to take to make it happen. They stress me out, but I know I can do it. And I know that all of you can do that too, and support Cocharia like you have been. Yeah, I think I'm talking in circles at this point, because those of you who have met me ever, I get excited about these things and I get touchy-feely, but that's who I am. And so thank you for being here. Thank you, our panelists. Ram is back, I see. Ram?
Yeah, I'm back. There's something that happened. I'm still not able to connect through my laptop, so I'm connecting through the mobile phone. Yeah, thanks a lot, Magda. So I think, yeah, if I disappear again, if something happens, so continue to host and moderate the program. There was something that I just wanted to sort of touch upon and then leave it again with the panelists. Michael spoke about this thing about, you know, people want to make changes. They have choices, and they find they do not have the control. And Priya talked about this whole concept of connecting. We are all connected. I'm a huge fan and a learner of quantum science. And I find every day, the more I study quantum science or dip into it, I find there's a tremendous amount of connection with quantum science and spirituality. Just a few days ago, one of our learners, who's now going to be soon one of our trainers, Leah, she reached out and she works with adolescents. And she said, look, you keep talking about all this combination of science and spirituality. So can you put that down in some simple words for me to be able to convey to them? And so I sat down and wrote something about the quantum science. So some of those concepts, I just want to briefly throw back at the conversation that we have had now. It's not quite quantum science, but there is something called the chaos theory, Lawrence, which was more about, started with meteorology, and now it is expanded to a lot more than that, where the fundamental thesis is that a change, however small, can actually pretty much cause a massive transformation somewhere else. And a very often quoted statement in connection with the chaos theory is that a butterfly fluttering its wings in China can cause a tornado in Chile or something like that. And this is a proven scientific fact that those small ripples that can be caused somewhere, that we can initiate just as thoughts and little bits of action, can gain momentum and such energy that can in fact become amazingly powerful movements across the world. Just like the way that Gandhi did, Mandela did, and Martin Luther King did, and there are other people like them who did that as well. And there is another principle of quantum science, which is about entanglement, which that particles once connected, stay connected, however billions of light years they may be apart. And that's what is with humans. And it doesn't have to be a physical connection. There can be a connection that can be established within our minds, within our consciousness, within our awareness. So the key is going into ourselves to be able to discover that part of ourselves where we feel a commonality with other people. And one of the things that we focus in our working at Cocharia is, like Magda has said and other people have said before, is the whole concept of self-awareness. And the self-awareness starts with coaching ourselves, embarking on that self-discovery. What are we here for? What's our purpose? What's our meaning? Recently, we ran this program on Create Your Future, which hasn't ended. It'll end after we finish this conference as a final session, where it's all about people who are confused about what they are doing today. They are in transition. Everybody is in transition. In the VUCA world, there is no one, unless he's a moron, who would say that I'm not in transition, because nothing is sure. The little virus, invisible microscopic virus, has taught us that we have no power. And there is something else which holds the power. And it makes us dance to its tunes, be it lockdowns, be it whatever. I will wear a mask, I won't wear a mask, and all that kind of stuff. So where is that discovery about ourselves in this, which eventually leads to a certain sense of acceptance? Where would that come from? And that acceptance is not a passive acceptance. It has to be an acceptance of what is right, what needs to be right. And therefore, like the Serenity Prayer says, for us to have the courage to be able to work towards the change that we can make, and also the wisdom to accept certain things which we may not be able to, but we can still move forward with. So I'll just leave it to the panelists. In the meantime, I'll try and see if I can get back on the laptop into the Zoom. If not, continue as I am. Over to you, Magda, to sort of continue the conversation. Thanks.
I think, Ram, that you've touched on a very important part of this idea of folks that are interested in coaching and wanting to be a part of that. For me, you blew my mind when the first day of our class, you asked a question about what is the universe saying to you? And in that question, there was so much for me to explore. And one of the first things I thought about is, what am I doing right now within the universe? And the idea of being someone who is a facilitator, you are guiding people Coaches guide people. I realized that in the work that I was doing currently, you can't train away bigotry. You can't train away things that are so deeply rooted in someone's heart and in their spirit and the fabric of their being. But what you can do is begin to work with that individual on a pathway and take them on a journey of self-discovery. And in the self-discovery, as a coach, guiding people to step into themselves in a way that they begin to act out of willingness versus obligation makes a difference. And so the idea of coaching being that opportunity to provide an experience or engagement or partnership with someone to take a journey. And the journey that they take is not directed by you, is not orchestrated by you. The origin is within themselves. And that idea of allowing someone to self-regulate, self-guide is a powerful position to be in. As an individual that can be mindless about who you are and set aside your agenda to open up space for someone else to set their agenda is a powerful way of being. And coaching, to me, allows that to happen in a way that is organic, in a way that is not forced upon anyone, and in a way that people can see themselves for who they are. And they have to be completely honest. And honesty is a part of that. And this particular time that we are living in and existing in demands that we are more honest with ourselves. If you have dreams, if you have hopes, any dream becomes a reality when you wake up. So you have to be awake. You have to be aware of achieving those dreams. And so being visionary, it helps set the stage, but being awake and aware moves you towards action. And, coaching to me has been a part of what I was doing, even when I didn't have the language to name it such. I've always been in a position of guiding people, not directing people in ways that lives were being transformed. But I didn't have the language or the theory or the underpinnings to really name it in that way. So now I'm gaining that in a very powerful way and realizing that I was living on purpose in a way that was guiding, in a way that is coaching, in a way that is empowering, in a way that can transform my own career path, but not in it for any other thing but to serve, to guide, and to support. Whatever happens along the pathway that helps me to continue to thrive, to feed my family, to get where I need to go in life is a bonus, but it's not the driving force.
This, if I may just add, this reminds me, Elizabeth, of a small session that we had last week in the group. And there was much talk about coaching skills, being a coach, being a credential coach. And a very interesting discovery for all of us in the group was to say, we don't need to be credentialed to hold a coaching stance. Each one of us can be empathetic. Each one of us can, acknowledge somebody. Each one of us can unconditionally be available and regard others unconditionally and positively. So somehow it's not just about credentialed coaches. I think it's something that is deeply within all of us. Somehow it just gets all lost in, I don't know what, in the busyness of life. I think if you can just stop and think, probably we can reconnect back to that. And each of us can do that.
Yeah, you bring up a great point of what is it like to go back and be the wonder of a child, where there is no judgment, there's total acceptance, and you're coming from a place of curiosity. Oftentimes we hear in coaching a beginner's mind, and this idea of mindlessness that Ram has put forward, in the sense that you're letting go to let come. You're actively just being in the moment in a way that allows you to vibrate in all areas of your being, in a way that you're receptive and that you process it, but understanding how you process it means you have to check with your intention. So just the name of the series, you know, Awake, Aware, Arise, you know, when I first saw it, I thought of, well, that's what we do every morning, right? But oftentimes we just jump into and onto the hamster wheel, so to speak, and get going. But what would it be like to be very conscious of how we awaken? What do we need to be aware of as we start the day? What is our intention? How can we be more heart forward in the way we go about things, in a way that connects both with people, with systems, with nature, with ourselves, with our own obsessions, etc. And then how can we arise from that from a place of intention that paradoxically requires us to abandon and accept what is in a way that we can contribute, collaborate, and do it in a non-violent way. As Priya, you were talking, it kind of reminds me of, you know, non-violent communication and emotional intelligence. And there's so many other factors out there that contribute to the field of coaching, which makes it such a fascinating area. And as everybody here on the call will soon find out over the next 30 days, there are going to be multiple perspectives. There are going to be multiple approaches. And at the root of that is the intentionality of self-agency. Self-agency for the client, self-agency for you as a coach, self-agency for anyone in the world who's going about doing their business in a way that's not harmful to others, in a way that is mindful, even if it is in opposition to mindlessness. There's always a lovely dichotomy that's going on when we're working. And I'm sure, Paula, you've experienced this too, in terms of dealing with dichotomies and intentions. And I'm curious to see you, hear what you have to say on this and what's coming up for you.
Gosh, you're just like reading my mind, because I was thinking about, Michael, something Elizabeth said, to be present for someone when you don't hold their viewpoint, and know that I'm not present here to convince them or to change them. I'm here to walk with them. To me, that is the deeply human aspect of coaching that has been, I would say, has been a part of my life all along, but Cocharia sort of opened up that in ways I had forgotten a little, and maybe this experience has too. The desire, I think, to be positive all the time. I was thinking about what Priya said about the one client who said the desire to be positive all the time was getting in the way of my desire to be human. And I think coaching enables us to be walking with people without pulling or tugging, but being just present. And to me, that allows us to hold the tensions. We think of dichotomies as being two different things, but really they're the tensions that exist in the world all the time, in ourselves and in others and with others. And so I think what coaching really does in terms of awareness for me is making me aware of, I don't need to agree or disagree. I just need to be present. And then the other thing that really came through in what you were saying, Elizabeth, is I have to hold a deep belief in the ability for people to be good and to care. And but we can't force people to do that. You have to guide and work through their learning and understanding. And I hold my own biases and things that I'm not aware of. And so what coaching does is I just feel like opens up the space in ways like they're incredible. That's why I think it's amazing to think about doing this with young people and with people who maybe haven't had anyone ever give them the space to have that agency. So yeah, it's been powerful. It like blow my mind is what Elizabeth said. It's been blowing my mind.
Mm-hmm. So in that sense of role and responsibility, when Ram started the discussion, quoting Peter Hawkins, this idea of having a sense of a role and responsibility beyond just performing as a coach, being a member of society, being a member of the greater, larger collective. There seems to be a stirring in the coaching community to respond in a way that heightens awareness, heightens self-accountability and self-agency going forward, in a way that may influence, to your point, Paula, about bias. You know, we all have our biases. We all have our quote unquote hard drives, you know, I was born in the 60s, you know, so I've got a 1960 OS operating system going here, you know, and it's constantly being upgraded, but occasionally it doesn't get upgraded, right? If I ignore those signs and I don't upgrade, I'm going to be using last year's way of being. And I think that's what's being called into practice now. It's not just doing things more efficiently, more effectively. It's taking it to the next level. It's arising to that next level of being. How are we being in this world? And what can we do as coaches, as leaders, as project managers? Because let's face it, we're all project managers. Every day is a project management task, an activity type thing for all of us. And so this idea of how we can envision ourselves being in that day that is collaborative, that has shared goals and strong relationships. And of course, coaching is relational. And Priya, I'll invite you to maybe say a few things about your experience with coaching as a relational activity.
I'm not very sure what you mean by relational activity, Michael, but the way I see coaching is really, it is about just relationship, right? It's about connection, which doesn't really have boundaries in any sense. We're really looking at the other person as a human being. I read somewhere a quote, forgive me if I can't quote it exactly, but what they say is, it was a Buddhist monk who said it. He said, there are so many things like religion, politics, country, geography that divides. But above all is humanity. Can we choose humanity over all these other aspects? And then we are all one. To me, that really is about relationship, right? It is, and a lot of it is about how you relate to yourself. And if you're able to do that in a loving compassion, loving kindness, I think it's far easier for us to do it for somebody else. And therefore, I keep thinking it's really about what's my relationship with myself. And that gets uncovered in the coaching journey, really, and you become aware of that. And then you're able to therefore connect or relate to somebody else, just as you would relate to yourself. So coaching is really, to me, two parts to that journey. One, you do something for others in terms of coaching, but it's also about you, how you're being with yourself. So it's also an internal, personal, inward-looking journey. So primarily the relationship with me and myself, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Michael,
and what? Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth, please.
I wanted to touch on the idea of what you introduced in terms of bias and in the cycle of socialization that we all get caught up in. That wiring is not just this automatic situation, but it's something that gets, built upon in the way that we engage with the world and how we interact. And so that creates those filters, the bias filters that we operate in. And I think coaching has a space in there to clear up those filters and ultimately remove them, so that there's a clearer flow of that unconditional positive regard towards others. And coaching can allow individuals, when they are struggling with their own personal biases, because oftentimes that bias is not just directed to someone who is different, it is directed towards them and their ability to achieve and to get where they want to go in life, because they have a clogged filter in which they're viewing the world. And so coaching allows space for people to clear up those filters. And a really good indicator of that is when individuals begin to use different language, or when they begin to not allow space for pain and other things that they don't even have words to understand it. They feel fear, but they don't understand the fear. They feel hurt, but they don't know how to define it. And so they give so much energy and space to the things they can't even define, because there's a filter that's clogged that won't allow the free flow of energy to even exist within them. Coaching creates a space for that. And I feel like if you are coaching, it is made evident in the experience and exchange that you have with the person that you're coaching, as well as the flow of energy that happens when you are guiding. And so at the same time you're coaching and guiding, you're feeling, you're growing, you're learning. There's something happening on both sides of that. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, that's transactional. It's just one side kind of feeling, growing, but you're not feeling and growing with your own agenda in mind. You're feeling and growing and connecting to the journey you're a part of at that time. And so I think that even in the midst of disparities and injustice, and when people are harboring hate or disappointment for their treatment because of any of the identities they have, or they are experiencing or living out these untruths and myths that they have about who they are and what they are, coaching can create spaces for those filters to just be cleared up in a way that is so meaningful to individuals, that it doesn't allow those things to continue to harbor and fester and grow. It redirects people outside of the cycle and gives them some sense of liberation.
Yeah, and liberation also in the sense of self-authoring, this idea of what narrative are you listening to? I mean, that's part of narrative coaching. Where is this in your body that's manifesting itself? Are you short of breath? Is it a pain in your back or your neck all the time? That's somatic coaching. There's so many different styles of coaching out there, coaching approaches, which makes it so rich, a field to study. When you talk about that, what's coming up for you, I can't express it. You know, Gene Genlin came out with focusing. These are all methodologies and all types of practices that help inform coaches to become even greater in serving others, the relation with themselves, as you pointed out, and your own bias. Well, that's spawned a whole new level of coaching called coaching supervision, where coaches come to a coaching supervisor and say, you know what, I've got some clients that keep triggering me and I can't figure out what's going on. And it happens, we're human. And that's where a coaching supervisor will sit down as a colleague, as a peer, and start to co-explore that. And then of course, supervisors have their own supervisors. So you can see how this is almost ever growing and expanding. And that's why coaching, I believe, is one of the faster growing professions out there. Certainly the ICF 2020 study that just came out indicated a huge growth in coaching and people going for coaching certification. Corporations now are looking for certified coaches. They want to know that you adhere to a code of ethics, that you take your role and responsibility in a way that does allow you to be open-minded, non-judgmental, but able to facilitate this sense of awareness and growth. And certainly one of the challenges I've had going into corporations is almost by session 4, the client or the team that I'm working with will say, this is all well and fine, but will the higher ups actually buy into this? Will other departments buy into this? And because how sustainable is this? And you know, this idea of systemic coaching now has taken on a new momentum. And I think that's opened up to wit this very conference of Awake, Aware, Arise, in terms of everything we do is in relation to a system, whether it's our own system, our own thinking, our own way of being and doing, and the social or commercial constructs of corporations and businesses. These are all human constructs. And I think sometimes people get caught up in their roles and their titles. And they can't afford to think otherwise, because that would expose a vulnerability or a sense that they can't embrace it because they don't have the time or the resources or the funds. And so there's this constant consternation that comes up. And so how do you own that in a way? Well, this is where coaching comes into play. And Paula, I'm just wondering what's coming up for you as you're listening to all of that.
There's two things, and one thing's very personal and one thing's about my role. I'll start with the role. It's interesting in leadership roles that you start to, it is so systemic. The expectation that if I'm a director or assistant dean, I'm an assistant dean, that my role is to direct. Like if I'm not directing, I'm not doing my role, is what you often get to in leadership positions. And I think it's coaching people to understand or working with people from a coaching perspective to understand the strength of sharing that power and that leadership. And that's where coaching could really impact a lot of organizational structures, is the idea, the fear people have of letting go of that power and almost a responsibility to staying in power. And so there is something there. The other thing I think about on a very personal level is how coaching is transformative. My most transformative experiences have been with people I knew very well who agreed to, let me coach them to practice. And then I discovered, wow, these are the most powerful conversations we've ever had, and we've known each other for years. And so what it means to the round point of like, let's step back from, just the credentialing of coaching and thinking about how this impacts, and maybe this is your relational point, how it changes our ability to be present everywhere, and how important it is that sort of value and that intention of coaching, whether or not you're doing a coaching appointment where you're really trying to follow guidelines and stay within the ethics of coaching, or whether you're interacting with people who have deep connections to you and you are recognizing that you have not been present without in this way ever with them. Even though they're dear friends to you, you discover I have not opened the space for you to guide in this way ever. It transforms both you as the coach, as the friend, sister, whoever you're talking to, and the person you're working with. And I mean, at the end of a couple of those conversations, we were sort of stunned into recognizing this was a different interaction than we've ever had before. So it's hard to explain until you're in it, but I've seen it happen for so many people. I know it exists. So those are two things that come up for me, kind of different.
Great, thank you. Ram, I'll invite you back in.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah, when you talked about the role of a director, and I'm looking at the titles that we've all held in our avatars in corporate space. I'm an executive, I'm a manager, I'm a director, I'm a president. I mean, everything is about, I'm in control. And if I do this, and if I create this, this is going to be the cause and this is going to be the effect, which is completely fake news. It doesn't work that way. And in spite of it, so what if people wake up to the reality that these labels that they give themselves, they are moronic and they don't mean a damn thing about it. I don't know whether it was, God knows who it was, who started all this in terms of management and leadership and these titles and so on and so forth. I don't want to blame anybody. But is it about time that we really re-looked at these titles into something far more meaningful, that we are really here to collaborate? So can a so-called general manager be a collaborator, and somebody else can be a co-creator, somebody can be a facilitator, can be a supporter rather than a leader? So at one level, I know these are labels, but unfortunately, people wear the labels on their sleeves, on their heads, and everywhere in their hearts. And that is what they think. If you wake them up in the middle of the night and ask them, who are you? The question that they are going to answer with is, oh, I'm the vice president of whatever, fake news in this company. And that is what the answer would be. So is there something more important that you can think of? And when I go back to something that Michael said earlier about the being, and he asked Priya to talk about relationship, and Elizabeth stepped in with biases and prejudices. I want to go back to something which is not that well known. Maybe some of you may know. Again, I'm going back to two of my favorite themes of science and spirituality. There was this guy called David Bohm, who was one of the greatest quantum scientists ever lived. And he was the first person who actually was able to put together general relativity theory of Einstein with Heisenberg's quantum mechanics and made sense out of it. And he talks about this particular theory called, I think it's called the wholeness and implicate order. And there he talks about something called enfoldment. Enfoldment is that it's really what the being level is. We all come together at some point. The opposite of this unfoldment, where we get fragmented, we get broken up, and each one of us is completely at odds. And in one of his conversations, those of you who have the interest and the patience, he holds a conversation very long. They are in 12 one-hour long sessions in YouTube free with J. Krishnamurti, probably one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived, who happened to be Indian. He lived most of his life in the US. He was a complete maverick and a radical. And Bohm says, you know, whatever her name he uses for Krishnamurti, I don't remember now. He says, sometimes I think I'm a particle, but very often I behave like a wave. And those of you who know something fundamentals of quantum science, every subatomic particle at the same time is both a wave and a particle. You don't know what it is at a point in time. That's the whole concept of Heisenberg's uncertainty theory. What he meant was that I'm localized in my body and I'm thinking about something, and suddenly I become a wave. I'm flying all over the place. And when I heard it for the first time, probably about 6-7 months ago, when one of our colleague trainers referred me to that, I said, oh my God, that really describes who I am. And I thought I was mad and weird. Most of us are, I mean, in the sense that your body behaves like a particle, you are in one space, but your natural being is a wave. It's an energy which spreads, it ripples all across. And that is what creates the collective consciousness which connects us with one another. As long as we stay as particles, we are, sad to say, may hurt some people, we are in the mindful state. We are in an ego state of reality, where all we can think about is our own sensing at that point in who I am, how important I am. But when you become a wave, you are the energy, you are the mindless being who is just expanding out, reaching to everybody. And I don't have any bias. And this is really what Carl Rogers talks about. And Elizabeth, I'm so proud that our learners are quoting Carl Rogers with such ease today, Unconditional Positivity, which is amazing, totally. Master coaches do not seem to understand that concept as well. That's what creates that unconditional positive regard and empathy. And that is what causes, in terms of what Sharma talks about as the emerging future, the generative visioning, generative listening. How do you expand rather than contract? We are all taught to contract. And that's what causes the pain. That's what causes our problems. How do we become non-localized? How do we get entangled? How do we fly like the Jonathan Livingston seagull in that space of freedom as a wave? If only we can even think about it. You don't need to fly. None of us know how to astral travel. I tried to learn for a long time. It didn't really work for me. Maybe for some people it does, but it doesn't matter, right? You can be where you are, but you can expand into that space, what Maslow calls the self-actualization, and where David Bohm calls the wave state. And Isavasya Upanishad says 5,000 years ago, he who sees himself in others and others in himself or in self is that divine being. So how do we discover? Somebody said here, yeah, coaching is an inward journey. Yes, it is. But it's not just an inward journey. It's also an outward journey. Once you realize that inner self of yours, then you really travel outwards because you don't stay in. You open up the boundaries and break loose. And that's what Awake Aware Arise is about. So yeah, I'll stop here.
Yeah, wonderful points you're bringing up. Kind of reminds me of Reinhard Stelter's book, Third Generation Coaching. And there's this idea that coaching isn't as it can be transactional, it can be transformative, it can be performance-based, it can be so many things. But it's how you're relating to whatever energy is showing up in you, in front of you, around you. And this idea of exploring holistically as opposed to digging, this idea of coming again from that place of curiosity. I mean, the ICF describes coaching as a partnering with a client in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So the idea of inspire, if you look at the root of that, it is to re-energize the spirit in a way that captures that, and from a creative and thought-provoking way says, okay, how can we manifest this into not just a new way of doing, but a new way of being? And how can we do this together and be on this continuous learning journey? I mean, that's really what it's all about. For myself as a coach, trainer, mentor, coach, coaching supervisor, it's all about the learning. Every client that comes in, every situation is a new learning opportunity if I allow it. If I don't get in the way, if I don't let my biases or my adherence to a certain process, a clear model or something like that get in the way, it should help inform me and guide me in the sense of where do we go from here? I have a choice point to make. And so this idea of choice points keeps coming up, and I'm wondering how that's landing with you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that what happens in the coaching space allows people to inform decision making. I think that when people, growing up, I always was told you come to some kind of realization by force or by choice. And I know when I was forced into things, that was not the most pleasant experience for me, nor was it any sense of empowerment. It really kind of stunned, me and stifled growth. But when one has the ability to choose and align with their choices in ways that have meaning, in ways that are purposeful, in ways that are intentional, I think intentionality is a big part of the choice process. And so as people are coaching and learning and having those ideas of self-discovery, the arising piece is focused on their choices. What do you choose to do? What do you choose not to do? What do you choose to hold on to or to let go of, to let come? And so the idea of choice gets supported through coaching. Choice gets supported through self-discovery. Choice gets supported through, the liberation of an understanding of deeper who you are. And I just feel that that is such a powerful positioning for folks who are in the midst of trying to figure life out or transition through life or wave through life, whatever that takes on. The idea of having choice and choices being informed by your own awareness, it's just powerful to me.
That makes me think of leadership. Again, Elizabeth, when you think about it, and some of the things Ram said, that if a leader, there are so many people who've taken on the mantle of their title and have made assumptions about what that means and would feel greatly relieved to have a choice to do something differently. And and I speak from my own experience of being a leader and working with others and colleagues, that the ability for people to understand there's a different way to be in this role, and there's a different way to engage the people who you have so much potential influence over, that would be so wonderful. And so when I think about that, I just think that idea of choice is really powerful. The other thing that came up for me when you were talking, Michael, about at some point the beginner's mind. I meditated for many, many years, probably 20 years now. And for me, when coaching happens at its best, it is the most deeply meditative process I've ever been in. I am present. I am mindless. The connection to the other person is, I'm unaware of myself. And for me, having stepped away from coaching roles and now being so desirous to go back into it, I seek that meditation with another person in a way that, it's again, hard to explain, but when you feel it and experience it, it is, I feel like, when you're at sort of in the flow of coaching. And that's aware.
You're at one. Yeah, you're at one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you, Paula. Priya, just before we head over to Magda, what would you like to add to this?
So I was reflecting on what Elizabeth said about choice, right? I think it's important for all of us, and perhaps for the coach to also create that awareness, evoke that awareness in the client to say that choice exists in you. It's not like it is given to you, you have it, you just do have it. But this whole conference is also about how are you using those choices, because if you have the power of choice, you also have the responsibility of how you rise to it and how you action from that space. So I think that's what stood out for me when I heard the word choice. I mean, we have it. Can we responsibly, in a way, to make the world a better place, can we make responsible choices? I think that's something that's talking to me right now.
Yeah, and what's coming up for me, of course, is, you know, as a coach, we have choice points when we ask a question or make a reflection. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. But the important part is to not be attached to it and to let others into that discussion, just like with team coaching, to allow everybody on the team to participate, so that there is a witnessing, an understanding, an appreciation, and acknowledgement, which we all need as human beings. And this is where coaching too is so self-affirming and life-affirming, and so positive and proactive, if you will. Caught by the expression, the wave, I'd like to surf the wave and surf over to Magda now and have her come in at this point of the call.
Yeah, just
like
before
a
Magda comes
tsunami.
in, Magda, if I could just add a little bit here.
Sure.
Because there was a word that Elizabeth used, I thought was amazingly powerful, intentionality. That word, it's been a long, long time since I've heard that word used. Yes, it's about choices, but Aristotle talked about two concepts of one is called the potentiality, another called the actuality. The potentiality is the potentiality of the universe, which is of infinite possibilities. And Vedic scriptures, we call it the Brahman, which is all powerful, infinite. Everything that you ever wanted to see anywhere was there. That's what the Buddhists call the Akashic record. That's the potentiality. Potentiality means that you can be whatever that you want. Actuality, and that's a wave. Actuality is a particle that you are, where you really want to reach out and get something. And the connecting point is really intentionality. It is not destiny. It is something that you can make happen. And you need to have that intention. You need to really get yourself committed to it. And that's what this whole concept of awake, aware, and arise is also about. And this is what every major philosophy teaches us, that we have this amazing array of choices. And can we make the right choice with the right intention? And once we make the right intention, everything is so easy, it'll follow through and you will achieve what you wish. And that's pretty much a universal law, the law of attraction, whatever word that you want to use that. So with that, I will leave it to Magda to close.
Well, I'm not going to close yet. Maybe you guys can answer my question and then we can close. I'm all about action. And as I'm listening to all your wise words, I kind of go between, clog in my throat to energy in my heart. And I keep wavering between, oh my gosh, it's all great, and then I get excited. So I want you to instill the heart bit in me and tell me and all of our panelists and all of our listeners, what can we do to affect individuals who maybe did not make the choice to be coached or cannot make the choice to be coached? Because as we talked about at the beginning, not everyone has access. And the other thing that comes to mind is that someone who seeks out a coach already has a degree of self-awareness to know that something needs to change, something needs to happen. But that's a very small portion of the people on this planet. So I'm wondering, is there anything that all of us can do in the next day, in the next 2 days, in the next week, where we can utilize the things that we know as coaches to affect change in more than just the clients who have chosen to work with us?
You're asking me, Magda?
I'm asking all of you. But sure,
Okay.
Rob, you can go.
Okay, let me start with this simple thing. We have talked about this many times. Every one of us, every human being with a heart and a head and the gut and the spirit is a coach, a healer, and a leader. And I think these three terms are pretty synonymous. They come together beautifully as an integrated one. So we are not talking about credentials here. We are not talking about certifications. We are talking about the ability for each of us to empathize with another person. We are talking about having that unconditional positive regard. And therefore, one of the things that I would request each person here in terms of the audience out here and come back and promote this. And that's something that we've been talking about, we want to do. We want to make it affordable. There is no one who wants to be a coach should be denied the opportunity to become a coach. And how do we do that? In what way? We need to figure it out. Whether it's through scholarship, whether it's through the free webinars that we conduct, in some ways can be put together. Doesn't matter if they don't get the credentials. If they're able to help one another, if they're able to promote that whole concept of what coaching is about, the collective consciousness. And that is really what is going to save this world, nothing else. Yeah, over to you all.
I think that if it's this thing of what do you do next from this space and as you leave here and leave this conversation, I think it's to avoid deficit thinking and realize that you have a lot within you. And so start asset building. Think about what you already have and go deeper into self and start asset building and avoid deficit thinking and seeking resolve outside of self. I think that's important to begin to transform that way of thinking and avoid deficit thinking and look at asset building.
I would say it's the ability, we all have the capacity to hold everything that's going on. Our heart, to be heart forward, to not be so fearful of our heart being damaged. We are resilient, we are human. And as coaches, we continuously build that capacity to hold the client and everything that they're coming in with. And in the same way, when I'm walking the dog in the morning and I meet somebody in the park and they start teeing off about something, I'll have a coach-like moment with them. I won't drop into a formal contract, but I'll just hold the space for them. And it's amazing what comes out of that. And I think we can all do that. If we just take that extra minute or two to appreciate the cashier that's standing on their feet 12 hours a day, or the guy who's handing out the soap and all that stuff, and just say, I really appreciate you. Thank you for being of service to everybody and everything. I hold all the millions of birds that suddenly dropped out of the sky in the last few days over Southwest United States. It pains me, but I hold it in a way that says I need to do something. You know, I met up with Romeo Dallaire, the general that was caught in the horrendous genocide in Rwanda. And he was telling us about all the things that he had witnessed. And I said, I feel your pain. What can I do? How can I help people in Rwanda? How can I help? He said, don't. Charity starts at home. Start locally and build it out. So what Ram was saying earlier about the butterfly wing, it starts at home. Look what Greta Thunberg did last year by starting this whole school strike and getting people to wake up to climate change and everything else. We can do this through small actions, reusing our shopping bags, doing whatever it takes to be more of a mindful consumer and think, basically it comes down to the question, Magda, is what I'm about to do going to help or hurt what is about to happen? And in what way am I moving towards my goals or away from honoring my intention in that day as I awake and get aware and arise to the new challenges before me?
It's a big question, so I have to think on it a little more, Magda, but I can tell you what's going to inform it for me is having a conversation with fear. You know, fear is a really strong propeller in my life. And it, in a lot of ways, has made me super planful. I'm someone who always thinks ahead, everything's in order, but that is a constrained way of thinking. And I think that it's going to be, for me, starting a conversation around when I have big ideas about things that could impact a lot of people that they're great ideas, but then fear stops me all the time. And so really not allowing the fear of the problem overcome some really creative solutions. And I've got to think on it still. So that's broad.
So for me, Magda, it's really about reconnecting to how am I showing up for the world today? I think we forget often to ask this. I mean, at least I forget sometimes to ask myself this question. And I think it's about bringing it to my consciousness every time. How am I showing up in what I do? How am I showing up today for the world? Right? And it's for what the world wants today. And I think that's something that I would just constantly keep in my consciousness going forward.
Thanks, everyone. I know it's a big question, but I ask it for a reason. And I'm hoping that as you continue attending these different sessions and living life as the amazing people as you are, you'll come up with those answers and you can tell me so that I can learn every single thing. But for now, I am going to wrap things up. Good news is the discussion doesn't stop here, not just because we have other sessions, but because there's a LinkedIn group that we have started so that all of you can go in and share after every session 24 hours a day. Just go in there and tell us what you're thinking. So I'm putting the link again right now. As soon as you go there, just request to be added and I'll add you right away. And I'm also going to ask you to please give us some feedback again after every session. So expect me to repeat myself every time. But here's a little super quick survey to let us know how we're doing after each of these. I get inspired every single day. I mean, it was funny when Priya was talking earlier and she said that you don't have to be positive all the time, and I'm not. But this like magical thing happens when I see you panelists and you attendees and when I interact with our community. I can't help but be energized, and I can't help but to smile and be excited and to be positive, even if I was feeling like crap 5 seconds ago. And that's because of the kinds of ideas that come up here. I get really bogged down by life sometimes. My sister frequently sticks a cat or a piece of cake or a glass of wine in my face because she's like, oh, are you getting depressed? And I go, yes, what is it today? And I just tell her, you know, small thing or big thing, usually big thing. But when I interact with you people, I can see that the better world is possible, not just because someone's going to come up with a silver bullet to poverty or to climate change. I'm positive because I can see that what coaching can do is it can impact every single person. We just need to figure out ways to be able to give people access to that language, to that benefit. Because yeah, every tiny change within us is just going to amplify and amplify and amplify to the things that we do, to the family that we interact with every day, to the neighbors we see on the walk with the dog every morning, to our workplace, to our government, to the social network connections that we have when we post something and it resonates with them. So all of you, thank you so much for being here. Our panelists, like, you're phenomenal. You're amazing. I knew that before coming in, but now I know it even more. So I appreciate you and your time and being here. And some of you already roped into quite a few other sessions. Some of you aren't, but now that you agreed to one, guess who's gonna be emailing you about others? This girl. So I will see all of you for sure, whether you like it or